Matthew here from miniwargaming.com, and this is another episode of Rules You Get Wrong. I think that's what we're going to settle on for the title, because it kind of works both ways. Rules you get wrong. If I'm saying it, means that rules that you think I got wrong, but you actually got wrong. And then there's rules you got wrong, meaning that you guys say that there's rules that I got wrong. So it's got a double meaning. Got that? This one is about the Grey Knights vs. Necrons battle report. And once again, I'm just going to re-emphasize that I respond to comments that are posted on the Mini Wargaming site shortly after the battle report is posted. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and post comments below, or you can post comments on our battle reports on YouTube. But this video is posted long before it ever makes it out to YouTube. So if you want to get involved in this discussion, where I actually type out your comments and address them, then you need to become a regular viewer on miniwargaming.com and post your comments when we put up our battle reports. So there's only a few ones for this game. There's a lot of repeats, and there's a few things that people actually corrected in the comments as well, but I still want to address them because I find that they are often misconceptions. So let's start. We have Auto76. Just letting you know, a unit inside a transport that explodes takes a strength 4 hit and must take a pinning test. Page 67 of the rulebook. Matthew, you should know this. It makes a big difference. Anyways, I enjoyed the battle reports and have learned a lot. Thank you for the compliment. And you're right, I should know that. But what you need to know is that in open top vehicles, it's strength 3. And they actually did take their pinning tests. You don't always get to see it on the battle report, but we do always take our pinning tests whenever a vehicle explodes. And I saw that that was corrected in the comments and that you realized it was wrong. But I still wanted to bring it up because other people might not know that. So if you're inside a vehicle when it explodes, strength 4 hit. But if it's open topped, it's strength 3. Just to kind of represent that, you know, you're not inside of a tin can when it explodes. It's more like open up, and so the explosion goes all around. Rabbi PT said, "Did you forget your solar pulses, Matt?" And the answer is yes and no. In the very first turn, I forgot it like for the first half of it. I'm like, can I please use it for the rest of it? Because it's kind of wasted points if I don't get to use them at all. And he let me. The second turn, I forgot again, and I said, okay, screw that, I'm not going to actually use it this time. And third turn, I remembered, but he was so close it didn't really matter. And every time he rolled to see if he could see me, he made it, so they actually made no difference. So solar pulses, well, they're not that expensive an upgrade to bring. Didn't really do anything for me this game. But in other games, they have made a difference, so I can't complain. I played against Imperial Guard, and in one turn, he basically couldn't shoot most of his vehicles. So that's a big deal when you're playing against Imperial Guard. Allinster said, since swarms are vulnerable to blast templates, should the wounds double and then all of them insta-kill? Example, shouldn't that have been 6 insta-kill wounds rather than 3? That's how I always interpret them, and I recall Matt saying something similar in a past video. I used to think that. So basically what you're talking about here is that swarms double the number of wounds, not hits, number of wounds from templates and blast. So anytime they get hit by blast, you roll to hit, you roll to wound, and they roll their saves. Every unsaved wound gets doubled. If they're hit, but they're also vulnerable, they're also toughness 3, which means strength 6 or higher weapons will insta-kill them, whether they're blast or not. So I used to think, which is why I never brought my swarms for my Tyranids, that let's say you hit them with a strength 6 blast, like plasma cannons, and would it double the number of wounds and then insta-kill that many? So let's say you had 6 bases, and you got the template that covered 3 of them and wounded all 3, and it's strength 6 or higher. Would that kill all 6, or would it kill 3? And I had thought it would kill all 6. But having done a lot of research on forums, the consensus is that there's no real consensus, that the rule book is ambiguous, but it seems that the common accepted practice is not to do both double and insta-killing. And the reason people justify this is, let's say you have 8 bases, let's say 4 of them get hit with a strength 6 template, and they all get wounded and they all fail their saves. Most likely it's a high AP weapon anyways. Well, you would double the number of wounds on those 4, and then those 4 would be insta-killed, thus remove them from play. Now I realize that that's a bit of a controversial subject, but it seems that that is the generally accepted method. And I looked at a lot of forums, and it seemed everybody agreed with that. So if you're going to play it, I would play it the way that most people agree with it. Because otherwise, swarms are useless, because everybody's got strength 6 blasts, which means you just kind of have to touch one of them, and boom, there goes a couple of them. And so that's the way we play it. So call it a house rule, call it a commonly accepted practice, whatever it is. It's not clear in the rule book. Paranoid NG said, couldn't the Dread Knight be mind shackled? I thought it was a monstrous creature, not a walker. Yes, it could, and it was several times. You just didn't always see it. And he made his mind shackle roll a lot in this game. In fact, I think out of the 12 times that he rolled it, he made it like 9 or 10 times. He only failed it 2 or 3 times, which, caused some damage to him, but he made it a lot. So yes, the Dread Knight can be mind shackled. That's the advantage of it being a monstrous creature for me. In fact, it's a lot of advantages. I don't know why it's a monstrous creature. I know people say, well, it's meant to kill monstrous creatures, so it needs to be a monstrous creature, but it's a walker, really, when it comes down to it. Kiba Tomu says, where in the rules do you see that scarabs have fleet? It's not in the Necron Codex anywhere. So in the rule book, do beasts have fleet? Where is my rule book? Because the answer is yes. But I don't know if my rule book is nearby. Here it is. Here it is. Okay, let's look it up. Let's look up beasts. Beasts. Okay, it is right here. Beasts and Cavalry, page 54. At the very bottom, assault, beasts, and cavalry have the fleet special rule. So yes, beasts are fast. They get to move their 6 inches, they get to run d6 inches, and then they get to assault 12 inches. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, the scarab swarms, very, very fast, which is good because you need them for the alpha strike to get in there and destroy a vehicle or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, depending on how well they do. Demon Prince Yourself says, why is the Grey Knight guy shooting twice with his twin-linked last cannon on the Dreadnought? It is only single shot, and he should have used Fortitude on the Land Raider, and I think he forgets he has force weapons. Let's answer one question at a time. He wasn't shooting twice. What we do, just to save time, if you just have a single twin-linked weapon, you roll 2 dice, and if you basically have to fail both of those dice in order to miss the 1 shot, because really, you roll 1 die, if it misses, you roll it again. So you might as well roll 2 dice. If one of them make it, then you've made it. So that's why he does that. We use that as a common practice for, it only works for single shot twin linked, just to save a bit of time. Also, he should have used Fortitude on the Land Raider. A lot of people were saying that. I don't know the Grey Knight's rules very well, but apparently the Dreadnoughts and the Land Raiders can actually ignore Crusaken with their psychic powers. So I didn't ever see him try to do that, so maybe he forgot or didn't know about it. And I think he forgets he has force weapons. Well, he didn't forget because what he was doing with his squads that had the force weapons is he can use 1 psychic power per turn, and he was using a psychic power to give him strength 5 instead of strength 4 hits. And so then he's not able to then use his psychic power to use the force weapons. At least that was the interpretation that we have. Space Fission says, only with stun does a walker lose an attack. And that is correct. I did say in the video that because he was shaken, he lost an attack. But let me just double check, because I believe because he was immobilized, he would lose an attack anyway. Here we are. Walkers, 72. Okay, walkers and assaults. Immobilized and or stunned walkers fight in close combat with 1 less attack than usual. And he was immobilized. He was immobilized and shaken. But otherwise attack normally. And there's always a minimum of 1 attack. So he had 2 attacks, he was immobilized, had 1 left. So I said because he was shaken, he lost an attack. I was incorrect in the reasoning, but we were correct in only having 1 attack. Space Fission says, weren't those Necron warriors within 6 inches of that Terminator? If so, he couldn't regroup even as a Space Marine. The answer is yes, they were within 6 inches. And you know what? That special rule is not here anymore. So I need a Space Marine Codex. Okay, Space Marine Codex. And they shall know no fear. Space Marines automatically pass tests to regroup and can take such tests even if the squad has been reduced to less than half, though all other criteria apply. So you're correct. I think he was within 6 inches, so that would have been an extra kill point. But in the end, I won, so it doesn't matter. So good point, though. I'll remember that for later. Maj Taco says, that Terminator would have been killed as he was trapped. He ran through the Necrons. Look in the morale section of the rulebook. That is incorrect. He wasn't trapped because you don't count the units that you are in combat with. So if you have the Terminator surrounded by guys, and then there's other guys around that aren't in the combat, then he'd be trapped. But he gets to go through the guys that are in combat with him. JK War says, don't worry about regrouping. Tanks cannot be locked in combat. Why is it that Matt can kill tanks in his opponent's turn? Now, this is also in the main rulebook, and is a pretty straightforward concept. Basically, when you assault a tank, not a walker, not anything with a weapon skill, but something without a weapon skill, so something that doesn't hit back. When you finish your assault, let's say it's still alive, you don't pull out for 1 inch away, or you don't do anything else. There's no regrouping. Even if you kill it, you don't get to consolidate. You just basically stay in base contact with the tank. If in your opponent's turn, the tank stays within base contact, you get to hit it again. at your normal attacks. No bonus charge attack or any bonuses for charging, obviously, because it's your opponent's turn. That's in the main rulebook, so you can look that up and learn more about that. It's very effective. If you run in, you manage to stun the vehicle, and then it's not able to move, then the next turn you're able to really destroy it because you get auto hits because it's not moving. Or if you immobilize it, same thing. That was all the questions, but there was one more thing that was it seems to be something that a lot of people talk about, and not just in this battle report, but all the other Necron battle reports, and that is mind shackle scarabs. There seems to be a lot of people saying that there are a lot of people complaining that the mind shackle scarabs are overpowered. So let me address that right here, because obviously this is all going to be subjective, very opinion-based, because on the one point, they're only 15 points, and on the other hand, they do incredibly good amount of damage if they are used properly. And you can also give them to your lords and overlords, so you're able to bring quite a few of them. In fact, I use that tactic a lot against armies that have good close combat armies, or good close combat units, or monstrous creatures and things like that. So at first glance, it seems overpowered. And to be honest, yes, they are very powerful. I don't think the points cost has much to do with their power. If they were 30 or 40 points, I'd still bring them, and I don't think it would affect the army very much. You can't look at points cost so much. Like, for example, Battle Wagon can take a Death Roller for, like, what is it, 20 or 30 points? And that thing is a massive upgrade. Like, Tank Shot, do D6 strength 10 hits. When you hit and you roll over stuff, do D6 strength 10 hits. Like, it's ridiculous how strong it is giving a Battle Wagon a Death Roller. And it's only 20 or 30 points. I can't remember exactly which one. But even if it was 30 points, it's pretty cheap. So you can't look at the points cost in a vacuum. What you have to look at is the overall, the metagame, like how the game works with the Mind Shackle Scarabs. Here's my observations with it. First off, against an army that doesn't have good close combat, they're useless, so that's not really an issue here. Our issue is, against strong close combat, you basically turn them on themselves, because except for that one Grey Knight player, most people fail the majority of their leadership test. So why is it then that we can use it without feeling that it's imbalanced? Well, the reason that I see that is because there's a couple things. One, as players get to understand Mind Shackle Scarabs more, they are going to be able to learn how to counter the Mind Shackle Scarabs. Like, for example, when you're playing orcs against Necrons, what you do when you're sending your orc boys with a one knob with a power claw is you keep the knob one line behind everybody. You don't put them out front. And that way, if I charge you somehow, I can't choose to go in a base contact with the knob with the power claw. And because he's not a special character, he can attack even though he's not in base contact, as long as he's within 2 inches of somebody who's in base contact. And so at most, I'm going to Mind Shackle Scarab 1 or 2 of your orc boys out of your mob of 20 or 30. And that's not going to make a big difference. In fact, it never does. Maybe I'll get an extra kill or 2. Maybe it'll change the tide of the combat if it was really close. But if it's really close, it's really close. So it would do very little, comparatively speaking. So if you learn how to counter it that way, then you're going to keep your knob behind. Now, that still doesn't address things like your monstrous creatures, because basically when you have a monstrous creature going, you don't really have a choice to keep him behind. He's going to be in base contact. In fact, a common strategy I use is I take my crappy unit of warriors with a Necron Lord with Mind Shackle Scarabs, and I'll charge a Trigon or a Dread Knight or something, because I know that if I make my Mind Shackle Scarabs test, he's not going to hit me at all. Most likely I won't do any damage to him, but he'll damage himself once or twice, lose combat and damage himself even more, and that'll continue until he's dead. So as people understand Mind Shackle Scarabs more, I think people are going to learn how to counter it more. They're going to learn what units to stay away from it and which ones to put into close combat with it. And just like some armies have a hard time against the mechanized lists or other upgrades of other armies, like with my swarms, I have a hard time against blasts and templates. The really strong monstrous creature or independent character close combat guys are going to have a hard time against Mind Shackle Scarabs. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not overpowered. It just means that as you learn their effects, you'll learn how to play against them. So that's important, that you understand how your opponent's army works so that you can manipulate it to the best of your advantage. That was number one. Number two is, when it comes down to it, it's not, from what I've seen, and I've played quite a few games now with the Necrons, it's the Mind Shackle Scarabs will rarely win you a game. What happens is you count on them and they'll actually backfire. And like, I'll charge in and be like, okay, I can do this. And then he makes his Mind Shackle Scarab test and then insta-kills everybody or starts doing lots of damage. And that's happened a few times against Orc player, against the Grey Knights. He was making them more often than he wasn't. I still managed to eke by a victory, barely. But if the Mind Shackle Scarabs had worked more often, then I would have won much more easily. So obviously that backfired on me. And that's that does add up. When you put it on 4 or 5 guys, that's about 60 or 75 points, which could be put into other upgrades. And so you have to kind of realize that they're not definitely going to work. Even on 3d6 with a leadership of 10, on average, they're going to fail that, but only just on average. And so there's a good chance that they'll also make it. So it's not something that you can just be like, oh yeah, Mind Shackle Scarabs, they're going to win all the time. Because in my experience, that's not what happens. So the debate will go on. That goes for lots of other things too. People are always going to say, oh, that's too overpowered, that's underpowered, this thing it's OP, it should be more points, or it shouldn't even be able to do this, or it should only be able to be used once per game. You know, we're going to talk about that till we're blue in the face with lots of things. Learn how to counter it, and you'll find that it won't be as overpowered. Don't look at the guy with the unit that has the power weapons and the 4+ invulnerable save with 2 Mind Shackle Scarabs and charge him with your Assault Terminators. That would just be dumb, because 2 of your Assault Terminators are going to turn on yourselves, and then you're going to have a hard time hurting it with just 3 out of 5 of what's left. So, but charge him with a mob of boys or a mob of even Space Marines. Be careful not to put the Power Claw or the Power Fist or Power Claw into base contact. All of a sudden you just have your regular guy hitting yourself, and then your strong guys can hit and do a lot of damage. So it's something to think about. Thank you for all the comments. Continue telling me rules you think I do wrong, even if you're wrong, or if I'm wrong. It doesn't matter. I'd like to be able to do these more and address those rules questions. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming. Stay tuned for more rules you get wrong videos, as well as other battle reports. Happy wargaming.